You and I are getting a divorce. Leave the money and get out of this house right now.
That's what my husband Joseph told me after not speaking for a long time. The first word he says are these cruel ones, and then he tells me to leave the house? Oh, is that so? I understand. I responded calmly and quietly left the house. Despite being married, the fact that money mattered more to him than I did was undeniably shocking. Yet I had somehow sensed it coming. The misfortune that was about to befall Joseph. My name is Olivia. I'm 65 years old, a typical housewife with a husband and a son. Instead of being a housewife, I worked quietly as an office clerk at a retail company. Joseph once said to me,
Wouldn't it be okay just to be a housewife?
"But I don't like having too much free time and thinking about future finances." I chose to work as a clerk. When I was in my 20s, my beloved parents passed away one after another. Suddenly alone, I spent my days in loneliness, often crying. Without any friends, the only interaction I had was at work. Back then, I was working as an office clerk at a construction company. Keeping track of the ever-changing workers, creating documents, it was a hectic life.
Olivia, can you do this paperwork for me? I have a date with my boyfriend after this.
Hey, Olivia, mine too. The other female employees, all with boyfriends or husbands, took it for granted to dump their work on me. I couldn't say no because I had no plans. Once I lied to get out of it, but felt so guilty afterwards that I realized I'm bad at lying. Then one day, while everyone else was leaving on time for parties or dates, I was left alone, finishing up the work they had dumped on me. Checking that no one was around, I sighed. That's when someone suddenly spoke to me from behind.
Olivia, I can help if you want. Not sure what I can do though.
Turning around, there was Joseph looking exhausted, the man who would become my husband. But Joseph, you are a construction worker, right? Office work isn't really your thing.
No, if it's not a bother, I would like to help. Is that okay?
Turns out he had been worried about me always working late when he came back to the office from the field. He hadn't approached me before because there were other people working late, but today when he saw no one else, he took the chance to speak up. I felt bad and refused that day, ending up working late again. But from that day, I started bumping into Joseph more often. He would always ask,
Are you working late today?
At first, I thought he was a strange guy, but as we saw each other daily, we inevitably got closer. Eventually, I accepted his help with work. Joseph, who had previously worked as an office clerk, was quite efficient and completed the task I asked of him. As days went by, we grew closer and evolved from colleagues to lovers. Years passed, and we eventually got married. We had a son, Leonard, and I believe that was the happiest period of my life. After giving birth, I quit my job to focus on child rearing. Once Leonard grew up, I started working as a clerk for a retailer. The salary was less than my previous job, but it was a much more comfortable environment for managing household chores, child rearing, and work. Joseph and I had a good relationship. I thought we were a happy family, but there was one thing that concerned me. It was Joseph's gambling habit. Even when we were dating, he often talked about going to horse races or casinos, talking about wins and losses. I was surprised by his behavior as I had no one else around who gambled. Honestly, I thought it was a costly hobby and wanted him to stop. The fact that he barely participated in household chores and child rearing also bothered me. But since Joseph was spending the money he earned and never asked me for money, I never really asked him to stop. Where did you go today?
I went to the casino, lost again. It's frustrating.
I remember having such conversations years later. When Leonard had grown up and become a high school student, Joseph was still fond of gambling, always finding time during work breaks or on his days off. At first, I tolerated it, but couldn't believe he would go during work and had even talked to him about it. Why don't you stop going to the races during work? We're running out of money, and what if you suddenly have to work?
It's my break time, so it's fine. Someone else will handle any sudden work,
he said nonchalantly. But,
look at the time. I need to go.
Where to?
I feel like watching the dog races today. See you.
He left just like that. I think that's when the cracks started to appear in our marriage. A few years later, Joseph retired before me. Despite our differences, I was grateful to him and planned a lavish meal for his retirement day. But my plans were shattered by a single sentence from him.
Olivia, I don't need dinner tonight.
Why? It's your retirement day and I thought we would celebrate. Apparently, Joseph had plans to drink with some people he met at the casino and dog races, including some women. I'm not usually jealous, but this did bother me. I also thought he could have spent the day with his family. Seeing my reluctant and dissatisfied face, he must have guessed my thoughts, but Joseph didn't apologize. Instead, he said, irritably,
Being with family is honestly boring. I have more fun with them.
I was stunned, having never heard such words from him before. Without saying anything else, he left for work. His retirement was uncelebrated, deepening the rift in our family. After retiring, Joseph dove deeper into gambling. He wandered from one place to another day and night. I knew where he had been because he would pull out stacks or betting slips from his pockets. He went to the casino today, to the racetrack another day. I wish I didn't know. If I had been firmer with him at that point, maybe things would have been better. By then, Leonard had moved out and I was spending lonely days in our big empty house. Our financial situation was tight because we were living on my salary, which wasn't very high. Joseph squandered his money on leisure and relied on me for living expenses. He even began asking me for money. Perhaps too lazy to withdraw from his bank account, his excessive behavior had always been a problem, but it worsened after his retirement. Can't you think a bit more about the family? We're living on the money I earn. Maybe you could help with some household chores.
Yeah, are you still on about that?
Joseph, resentful of my previous attempts to talk sense into him, would sulk and ignore my concerns. It was frustrating. He kept on gambling, coming home in a bad mood more often, usually because he lost. Welcome home.
Don't talk to me.
I was getting yelled at more frequently. What would become of us if we continued living this way? I was filled with anxiety. Since retiring, Joseph had grown even more distant. As days passed, he started coming home in the early mornings, often smelling of alcohol. I don't want to smell this early in the morning. Did you go drinking again?
Shut up, it's my life, isn't it? You just need to quietly earn money,
he said and went to the bedroom without taking a shower. I can't remember when we started sleeping in separate rooms. That's how cold our marriage had become. When I come home from work, Joseph is usually not there. If he is, he's usually inviting someone over, making noise with cans of alcohol and snack bags scattered on the floor. Not this mess again.
You're back. I'm going out to drink with this guy. Don't eat dinner,
he said, then left with his guest. Days of cleaning up after Joseph never got easier. A sigh escapes me. No one was there to hear it or care. A few months later, it was finally my day to retire. Finding a job had been hard as a mother, so I was grateful to the company that hired me. I'm thankful for everything. As I said this, there was applause and coworkers gave me flowers and gifts. They were truly wonderful people. Tears started flowing as I thought about this. I went straight home from work. It was still daytime and I thought Joseph wouldn't be there, so I felt lighter. I'm home. I cheerfully greeted the empty house. Then,
welcome back. You're early today.
Someone I didn't expect was there. Joseph. Why are you here? It's unusual for you to be home at this time.
Huh? It's my house. Of course I can be here.
He said something reasonable for once, which surprised me. I thought maybe he remembered my retirement and stayed home for it, but that hope was quickly shattered. As I stood there, Joseph said,
Come into the living room.
He urged me. I entered, placing the flowers and bags on the table.
Today is your retirement, right? How was it?
Everyone celebrated. I really appreciated the company. As I spoke, Joseph slammed his fists on the table.
I'm not asking about that. I'm talking about money.
Money?
How much did you get from the investments you made while working?
Joseph wasn't celebrating my retirement. He was demanding money. Months ago, I mentioned retirement, which he usually forgets, but he remembered anything about money.
I've been waiting for you to retire, so now we're getting divorced. Leave the money and get out of this house.
I see. I'm no longer useful to you?
That's what I'm saying.
He yelled when I confirmed. Understood, but I haven't received the money yet. I'll bring it when I do.
What? You haven't got it yet? Useless company?
Joseph took out a completed divorce application.
Sign this. We're no longer husband and wife.
He stood up and left the living room.
But leave quickly. I've been living with someone like you till today. You should be grateful.
He left with those final words. Knowing it was futile to resist, I signed the divorce papers, packed some light luggage, and left the house. I hadn't anticipated the sudden turn of events and was troubled about how I would live from now on. Worrying about where to sleep and what to eat, losing a house was indeed a great hardship. Later, I concluded that with the money I had, I could afford to stay in a budget hotel for a while. I found a nearby business hotel and decided to stay there. The room was larger than expected and the bed was comfortable. I fell asleep thinking I needed to figure something out before my money ran out. A month later, I found myself in a different place, sitting on a beach, watching the sunset over the sea. I thought about how enjoyable the day had been. Suddenly, my mobile phone rang. Who could be at this time? I was embarrassed to admit, but the mechanical ringtone interrupted my pleasant moment, which irritated me. No, maybe that person was the problem. I saw the caller's name on the screen and pushed the phone back into my pocket. But the persistent ringing got to me and I answered the call impulsively. Hello?
It's not hello. Where are you?
It was Joseph. In Italy?
Italy?
After Joseph kicked me out, I spent a few days in a hotel but knew my funds would soon run out. I longed for a peaceful place to spend my time. That's when I called my son Leonard in Italy. Leonard had successfully graduated and was working for a big company. He had met his partner there and moved to Italy after quitting his job. You know, when I explained my situation to Leonard, Joseph's behavior, being kicked out and now being homeless,
Why don't you come and live with us?
he suggested. The challenge was the travel cost to Italy, but I lied to Joseph. Actually, I had received the money when he kicked me out. My company had advanced the payment early due to my complaints about Joseph to ensure I wouldn't struggle financially if we divorced. If I gave that money to Joseph, he would have gambled it away, so I lied on the spot. He deceived me so well that I congratulated myself on how much better I was at lying than when I met Joseph.
Didn't leave any money and went to Italy?
It's not like we're married anymore. Joseph's voice sounded shocked, confused.
Huh? Not married? What do you mean?
Shouldn't you have filed for divorce? I asked. Didn't you file the divorce papers I signed?
I didn't file them.
Joseph revealed that the divorce papers was a bluff to get money from me. He never intended to divorce me. He was surprised I compiled so easily and felt embarrassed to call off the divorce now. He planned to say,
If you bring the money, I won't divorce you.
Dumbfounded by Joseph's scheme, I was at a loss for words. When I remained silent, Joseph, sounding desperate, said,
Hey, you owe me for supporting you, right? So help me out and give me the money.
True, he supported me while I focused on child rearing, but in the latter part of our marriage, it wasn't an exaggeration to say I was the one supporting him. His words angered me. You just see people as money, don't you? What's the point now? That must have struck a nerve. He began to rage over the phone.
Wait, what's with that tone? Because you said you would give me money, I used up all my savings. What are you going to do about it?
Used it all? All that money? There was a considerable amount in our joint bank account for our retirement. As I had suspected, Joseph had squandered it all on gambling. He also splurged on expensive meals for his gambling friends and spent it on women. When he started running out of money, he foolishly tried investing, but obviously, that didn't go well either. However, even though he had lost so much in gambling, there was no way that he would be successful in investing. Joseph was almost crying, begging me repeatedly,
Come on, we're married, right? Haven't we always helped each other?
Helped each other? Sure, at first, but what about recently? All you ever asked me for is money. I raised my voice without realizing it. Joseph seemed shocked, having never seen me like this. Then that's it.
Wait, lend me money.
Despite my anger, Joseph kept begging for money. I decided I never wanted to see him again. Realizing that money mattered more to him than our marriage, I felt both sad and used. Ignoring Joseph's loud protest, I hung up. Leonard, who was with me, asked,
Who was that on the phone? I haven't seen you that angry in a long time.
Oh, didn't you hear that? It was your father. Leonard seemed to understand after I answered. More calls came, but I ignored them, knowing the call charges would burden Joseph even more. However, when the phone connects again, Joseph is forced to pay for the call and end up making things worse for himself. I wondered why I ever married him, feeling sad about it. But I was grateful for Leonard, whom I wouldn't have met if not for that marriage. I'm grateful for that. Fed up with Joseph's persistent calls, I blocked him. I wondered how frantic he would become upon realizing he was blocked. Later, I decided to return to America to officially end things with Joseph. I consulted a lawyer and together we confronted him. Initially, Joseph refused to divorce, claiming it was all a threat. But he didn't realize that by signing the divorce papers, he had already shown intent to divorce. His attempts to explain failed and the divorce was finalized. From relatives, I heard Joseph was now begging them for money. Initially sympathetic, they stopped lending him money as his demands became excessive. Shunned by relatives, Joseph was now struggling, doing odd jobs to make ends meet. He hadn't paid his utility bills, so his services were cut and homelessness loomed. After the divorce, I returned to Italy to live happily with Leonard and his family. Although it was not the retirement I had envisioned, I was adapting to life in Italy, even learning to shop alone. Despite everything, I felt content with this new life.